Good evening, and welcome to the Columbus Municipal School District Parent Meeting. The purpose of this parent meeting is to inform parents about the important issues related to educating their children. The Columbus Municipal School District recognizes that the parents are their child's first teacher and their strongest advocate. We will continue to provide meaningful parent engagement activities and resources to raise awareness and establish expectations about the learning environment. It is an important value for the district to provide information to parents as we work collectively as a community to prepare students for college, the workforce, or enlistments. We thank you for attending virtually and here at Cook Auditorium. Welcome again. My name is Cherie Labat, and I'm the superintendent of the Columbus Municipal School District. I will begin this evening by introducing our esteemed guest, Ms. Kristen Wynn, NDE, State Literacy Director, and her phenomenal team. Kristen Wynn's service in the field of education spans over 15 years. She is committed to ensuring equitable access for all students to effective literacy instruction, highly qualified teachers, and high-quality instructional materials. Her experience in the classroom includes teaching first and second grade, as well as serving as years as a new teacher mentor. Ms. Wynn previously served as a literacy coach for the Mississippi Department of Education, a regional literacy coordinator, and assistant state literacy coordinator, and currently serves as the state literacy director, where she has worked diligently to improve literacy outcome of schools and districts across the state of Mississippi. She is the co-creator of several literacy professional development trainers for educators, aligned to the science of reading. During the 16-17 school year, she co-produced the MDE's Literacy Focus of the Month in action instructional videos featuring literacy coaches and students in Mississippi classrooms. During the 2017-2018 school year, she began working with coaches to increase the rigor and consistency of writing instruction in kindergarten through sixth grade classroom, and she now, through the development and implement of writing galleries, my apology. Currently, she serves as a member of the Mississippi Reading Licensure Task Force, the Mississippi Reading Panel, the Higher Ed Literacy Council, and the Governor's Task Force for Teacher Preparation in Early Literacy Instruction. Kristen is the wife of Detective David Wynn II and mother to two wonderful boys, Braxton and Parker. Please give Ms. Wynn a warm Columbus Municipal School District welcome. Ms. Wynn.
Thank you and good afternoon. Turn it off. Still on? Can y'all hear me? Perfect. All right, so good afternoon. Before I get started, I just want to gauge the audience for a second. How many of you are family members or parents joining us tonight? Raise your hand. Don't be shy, okay? How many of you are teachers or faculty members here in the Columbus Municipal School District? Raise your hand. All right, so how many of you are just here for the kids? We're just here for the children. All right, love it. So before I get started, we're going to start here. Our literacy initiative for the state of Mississippi is built around strong readers, strong leaders. And it is imperative that we have part of families as a part of that partnership. So there's teachers, there's community members, there are families, but we all have to work together collectively to ensure students are successful in the field of literacy. All right? So I want to, before I get started, introduce two of our great literacy coaches that will be joining me this afternoon in presenting some activities. Our first literacy coach is Anne-Marie Carlisle, wave at the crowd, and then Chelsea Kilgore. They will be working through some activities as we move through the presentation. Our work in literacy is guided by our State Board of Education goals, as well as our vision and mission at the Mississippi Department of Education. So our session goals, this is what we'll discuss today. We're going to look at families as partners in the Literacy-Based Promotion Act. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the Literacy-Based Promotion Act. All right, so we're going to go over that just a little bit. We're going to explore the Mississippi Academic Assessment Program, which is our MAP ELA third grade assessment. So we're going to look at some components of that. We're also going to talk briefly about social emotional learning, and then these lovely ladies are going to review our 5 essential components of reading and talk to you about some activities that you can use as teachers in your classroom, and for parents and community members, how you can help grow our readers in the community. All right, so families as partners. So it's important for us to look at literacy and think about it in the arena of it being an economic issue. Reading, if we look at this data here, 88% of students who failed to earn a diploma were struggling readers in 3rd grade. And I feel like I have a little echo. So when we look at this, this is very telling data. Our Literacy-Based Promotion Act really stresses the importance of students reading at or above grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And this is why. So students who are not reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade are 4 times more likely not to graduate high school. In addition to that, if we look at the impact of students who are Hispanic and African American students, if they are not reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade, they are 6 times more likely to drop out or fail high school. If you add the component of low-income minorities to that, then they become 8 times more likely to drop out or fail to graduate high school. So I'm going to sit because I feel like I got to. Can you hear me better? Good. So this is some impact data. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the NAEP assessment, but in 2019, our students across the nation, 4th and 8th grade students, took the NAEP assessment. And what NAEP stands for is National Assessment of Educational Progress. And this assessment is administered every 2 years. So when we look at this data, it shows us some information that says only 35% of our 4th graders were proficient or advanced on this national assessment. 65% of the 4th graders were below proficient. If we look at these 2 pie charts and we look at the data in the orange and the blue, we also see an alignment of how students should be taught to read. So 40% of students need little to no explicit instruction for reading. But 60%, the same 60% or 65% that were below proficient, need moderate to explicit or extensive explicit instruction. So this graphic tells me this, and this is oftentimes the misconception. Reading is not natural. We weren't born being able to read. Speaking is natural. That's a natural thing. Babies are born and they go through the developmental stages of language development. But reading has to be taught. And this graph shows us how it should be taught to the majority of our students. They require explicit, systematic instruction in reading. Reading must be taught. All right, so the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, we're going to talk about that briefly. So the purpose of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act is not what people think. Most people go straight towards this act saying 3rd grade students take an assessment, and if they don't pass the assessment, then they are retained in 3rd grade. But the act is much more than just that. The act and the purpose of the act is to improve kindergarten skills, reading skills of kindergarten through third grade students so that by the time students leave third grade, they are reading on or above grade level. Now, with our with our Literacy-Based Promotion Act, we do have accountability in kindergarten. So all kindergarten students in the state of Mississippi take a kindergarten readiness assessment at the beginning and the end of the school year to gauge their readiness and growth. In addition to that, the law requires all K-3 students to take a universal screener at the beginning, middle, and end of the year to determine progress in reading. So these are the components of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act that are required for schools and school districts by law. All right, so with universal screeners and diagnostics, there are lots of misconceptions because we usually try to use them interchangeably, but they're very different. So our K-3 screeners that students take at the beginning, middle, and the end of the year, they identify the students that need intensive support and intervention. So that's the identifier. The screeners that children take identify the students. The diagnostic assessment pinpoints exactly what the students need instructionally, aligned to the science of reading. So this identifies, the diagnostic pinpoints, and give us information to know if students need more intensive instruction or intervention. In 2016, the law was amended to include the individual reading plan. So if students are identified on the screener, if you have a student identified on the screener, you give a diagnostic assessment to pinpoint their instructional needs, and those students should, if they're Tier 3 students, receive an individual reading plan. All right, so parents, if you are a parent, I am a parent. I have 2 boys. So parent notification is extremely important, and it is a part of the law. If a K-3 student has been identified as having a substantial reading deficiency, the teacher will immediately, and with each quarterly report, notify the parents or legal guardian of the determination and plans for addressing the deficiency. Meaning, parents, if your students are identified on a screener as being a student that needs additional support or intervention, you should be notified by the district immediately. And each quarter to track your students' growth and progress towards proficiency. Now, the beginning of year screener window opened July 22nd. That screener window closes September 24th, which is tomorrow. So, in the coming weeks, if your student has been identified as having a reading deficiency, you should be notified of that immediately, even as young as kindergarten, okay? All right, so I want to briefly talk about the third grade reading assessment, which is our MAP assessment. I won't get into too many details about this assessment, but a part of the law is that students in third grade take what is called the third grade reading assessment. This assessment is administered to determine promotion or retention. Last year and the year before, due to the pandemic, there was a waiver given for this particular assessment. So the assessment did not count for promotion or retention. The students took the assessment. However, that was not the determining factor to whether they were promoted or retained in third grade. So I want to preface by saying this. At this time, students must score a level 3 or above to be promoted to the 4th grade. At this time, during the 2021-2022 school year, students will be, or third grade students will be administered the assessment between this assessment window. The window opens April 4th and it closes April 22nd. And then we know alternate forms of the third grade MAP ELA assessment will serve as retests. Students will have 2 retest opportunities. So if you have a third grade student, they will take the assessment within the assessment window. If they pass the assessment, they move on to fourth grade, excuse me. If they fail the assessment, they have 2 opportunities to retest on this assessment. In addition, there are good cause exemptions, and I'll briefly go over that. But before I do, I want to just briefly talk about what the assessment covers. So the students are assessed with the third grade standards. So they're reading literature standards, reading informational standards, and language standards. There are 40 items that count on the test. The test time has been extended to 180 minutes. So students have 3 hours to take the reading assessment. There's 1 writing prompt, and they have 75 minutes to take that. The writing prompt cannot be used against them. It can only help them and boost them or move them up to a level 3. But at this time, we are moving forward with third grade testing. So there are some good cause exemptions. There are some exemptions. We have those with limited English proficient students who have less than 2 years of instruction, students with disabilities whose IEP indicate participation in the statewide accountability assessment program is not appropriate. And I have a star by this one because promotion and retention requirements were waived by the State Board of Education, which included good cause exemption. So completing good cause exemptions paperwork for the 2020-21 school year was a district decision. Some districts chose to complete the good cause exemption paperwork as additional documentation to ensure students receive interventions and to make interventions decisions moving forward. But due to the waiver that took place in the 2020-2021 school year, good cause exemption E will only require 1 year of documentation. C will only require 1 year of documentation. Good cause exemption D is the retest. And then good cause exemption E, it deals with the intensive interventions in reading. But this, again, has a star by it because last year's assessment was waived. So students only, or teachers, you only have to have 1 year of documentation for this particular good cause exemption. And we know that just because students are promoted to 4th grade on a good cause exemption, and students are promoted to 4th grade for scoring a level 3 or above, does not mean they're necessarily proficient. 4 or above is proficient, and 3 is getting them there. So we want to make sure that if students are promoted to 4th grade on a good cause exemption, that they still receive intervention and some supports as needed. All right. So you can use your phone to access the practice test if you as a parent or teacher want to look at that. But I want to say this about this math assessment, and then I'm going to move on. Reading, again, must be taught. And there is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the inability to read words. So we can't just have kids practicing on this test in anticipation that they will pass the test. We have to make sure that we are taking the necessary steps as teachers, as administrators, as family members, to make sure we're working together collectively and collaboratively to ensure our students are reading and are reading and able to understand what they're reading. So here are 2 sample items, but again, you can go back and watch this presentation and use the QR code to access the practice test. But here's 1 sample item, and here's sample item 2, which is a passage and a 2-part question. And again, here are the testing dates, the retesting windows, both retesting windows. All right, so I'm going to stop here because collectively we're working together to build strong readers. So parents and community members and teachers, we want to provide you with some activities that you can do in your classrooms, or parents that you can do at home with your students to build their reading skills at home. So I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea and Anne-Marie to go over some of these activities.
I'm going to walk this way so that I can see the screen too. But I just want to say I'm so glad to see all your faces. I do not often get to spend time in Columbus, so I'm glad you guys are here. We're going to look, are you going to click for me? Beautiful. We're going to look at the 5 components of reading. I'm going to cover the first 2, and then Anne-Marie's going to take the others. But if you look here, this is an equation that depicts the simple view of reading. On the front end right here, where you see decoding times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So like Kristen mentioned, without both of those components, we can't build proficient readers. They have to have the ability to decode, which includes phonemic awareness and phonics. They have to have the ability to comprehend the language through listening comprehension and vocabulary, and then together those build reading comprehension. Okay? First, I'm going to talk about phonemic awareness, and this is working with the sounds. So no letters are represented when students are practicing this skill. Phonemic awareness is the ability to hear and distinguish sounds. It's all about the sounds we hear. A strong predictor of early success in reading. So if the students can isolate, manipulate, and hear those sounds in our spoken language, they're going to be more successful when we tie the letters to those speech sounds as they decode to read. So if we look over here, I think there's an activity. Oh, here we go. And I have an anchor chart, so that's why I'm walking this way. If you want to take a picture when we're finished, this first, or I guess third technically, anchor chart depicts what's on the screen. So this activity is called animal syllables. And because we're working with speech sounds, we're not going to need any copies of anything, any letter cards. We're going to do all of this orally to make sure the children can hear and manipulate those sounds. So what you'll do is have your child or your students think of an animal, any animal. If I chose the animal, a gorilla, I really like gorillas. They look big and strong. So if I chose gorilla, I would tell my parent how many syllables I hear in the word gorilla. I may clap them out. I may put my hand right here. I'll move my mask. And count how many times my jaw moves down. So gorilla. My hand moved 3 times. Gorilla. I clapped 3 times. So that word has 3 syllables or word parts. So now that I know gorilla has 3 syllables, I'm going to brainstorm with my parent words or foods, let's say foods, that also have 3 syllables that maybe I could feed the gorilla. So now I'm trying to brainstorm words with that same number of syllables, like banana, banana. That has 3. I could feed the gorilla a banana. But if I said apple, I'd count the syllables with my parent, apple. Oh, well, that only has 2, and we said gorilla has 3. So I'm going to keep brainstorming. And ultimately, the students are going to continue to practice with as many words as they brainstorm, and they may find a few that match. But ultimately, they're just identifying those syllable or word parts, so they're playing with the words, and that's the key. We want them to hear each part. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. Okay, phonics, like I mentioned, is when we tie the letters in our print to those speech sounds. So this is the relationship between letters and sounds. Children's reading development is dependent on their understanding of the letters and letter patterns that represent the sounds of spoken language. So again, it all comes back to the ability to decode the words. I can't comprehend what I'm reading if I can't tell you that CH together says ch and not k. Because if I try to decode it as a single sound and not a digraph together, I won't be able to read that word. So that's where phonics comes into play. In this activity, it's just called bag of letters. And here can be very simple. On a scratch piece of paper, write some letters that you know your child has been taught, and they can be letter patterns like CH or SH. Their phonics skill for the week. Write those letters on individual little pieces of paper. Stick them in a bag or a cup or a bowl, and have your child reach in and get one out. And whatever that letter is, you want them to make the sound for that letter. So I will practice with Anne-Marie. Here's my bag. It's fancy, I know. It has a little clip. Okay. And kids just love to put their hands in bags. So I'm not really sure. It's nothing fancy, but it excites them.
This letter sound is
T. Beautiful. And if she said G, I would correct her and we'd have the conversation and together make the production correctly. In this bag, there's also, like I said, some digraphs and some 2 letters that make one sound. We'll stick those in here so that they can have that practice too. But real simple, quick, you can do on the go, in the car, all the time. Any questions about that one? Okay, moving right on to fluency.
okay. So the next component we're going to look at is fluency. And fluency is the ability to read accurately with sufficient speed and support. To understand what you read, children must be able to read fluently, and this is whether they're reading out loud or if they're reading silently to themselves. They need to be able to read fluently to be able to understand what they're reading. And so we have an activity for fluent reading. But first, I want to remind you of nursery rhymes. Do you guys remember saying nursery rhymes or saying poems or songs that had little poems that had songs to them? Well, I have a couple up here. I have Humpty Dumpty and Hey Diddle Diddle. So listen to Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Do you hear how those words are phrased together and you could say them fluently together? So saying nursery rhymes and poems with your children helps them to develop those phrases in speech so that they can translate that to reading fluency. Another activity we have over here is the sight word race. And so on this activity, you're going to pick sight words that are appropriate for your child's grade level. And I have some up here in a bag I can show you. This is just a bag of about 15 sight words for a first grader. And you're going to flash those words in front of your child and let them say the words. And you'll set a timer for 30 seconds. As they're saying the words, you're going to divide them into red and need help pile. And once you have finished the activity, you will review the need help pile with your child. And once you've reviewed those words, you can set the timer and you can play again. And you can switch these words out. It's just important to make sure that you're choosing words that are on your child's grade level. So another component that we're going to look at is vocabulary. Vocabulary is knowledge of and memory for word meaning. And this refers to words that your child must know to communicate effectively. So you can describe vocabulary as oral or reading vocabulary. And our activity we have for vocabulary is, and I like to read it from the anchor chart because that's what I'm used to doing. It is the synonym hot potato game. And so what you would do with this is you would pick a word and you would say that word, and then your child would say a synonym or a word that is similar. For example, if you said cold, your child might say chilly, and then you might say freeze. And then you would continue along that line until you guys couldn't come up with other words. You probably heard of the game hot potato. You can play this game with numerous children at one time with hot potato. And up here I have a ball. You can use a potato, you can use a ball, you can use a beanbag. And what you do is you play music. And the children toss the object around. And when the music stops, they have to pick a synonym for the starter word that y'all chose. And you keep playing the game until nobody can think of any more starter words. And some good starter words would be happy, sad, delicious, pretty. Let's see, I think there were a few more up here. But anyway, any of those words that you can think of that there are lots of words that go with. Small, big, funny, scary. So you can play this game repeatedly with your kids, and they enjoy it, and you can play it with any grade level. Well, our last component is comprehension. And comprehension is the ability to draw and understand and draw meaning from text. And this is a critical, it's an ability to critically think about the text. And so if your students are reading and they can't understand what they're reading, that's really the whole purpose of skilled reading, is to understand what you're reading. And so to build comprehension skills, we have an activity that is where you ask your child to pick a text or a book or a story that they like to read, and then you're going to have them write a letter to the main character. And what you might have them do is to tell the main character their favorite part of the story, the part they like the least. If there's a problem in the story, they might tell the character a solution, a possible solution to that problem. And the other thing they might do is if they have questions about the story, they could ask the character the questions that they have about the story. And so these simple games just help reinforce those comprehension skills for students. And all of these games are really good for reinforcing the 5 components of literacy, because remember, if you can't understand what you're reading, then you're not going to be able to comprehend if you can't read what you're reading. Thanks.
Good. All right. So all of these activities at the end, we will show you where you can access them. You can get them. We've created a website, and you can access them from your cell phone. So it's something as easy as going to the website, accessing them from your cell phone. We have activities starting at birth, some things that you can do with the younger kids, and then all the way up to 5th grade that is aligned to these 5 essential components of reading. One thing as parents and teachers that I want you to remember is Anne-Marie talked about and Chelsea talked about phonemic awareness, and that's the working with sounds. You don't have to know the academic language that we use in education for certain things. You just need to know that that means working with sounds, that I have no letters, but my child is able to hear the sounds. And that is so very important as students are learning to read, that they really are able to hear those sounds. I don't share this often, but sometimes I do. My son, I have a younger son who's dyslexic. And so we did not find out until 3rd grade that he was dyslexic because he's taught himself to compensate for his learning disability. So in 3rd grade, now he gets to 3rd grade where students are now reading to learn and not necessarily doing a lot of learning to read. And he had gaps in working with sounds. So I have to get him some extra tutoring outside of school where they just focus on him understanding his sounds and being able to apply those to phonics skills and to his reading. So we want to make sure that we do all we can early as possible. We want to be preventive of these reading difficulties and do all we can early as possible to make sure students are very strong in understanding and being able to hear their sounds. In addition to the phonics and the fluency and the vocabulary, comprehension is the outcome. We want all of our students, K-4, K-12, to be proficient readers, to be able to read, understand what they read, and be able to comprehend effectively what they read. So that brings me to this slide right here. How can we advocate for, or how can you as a parent, a community member, a family member, advocate for the needs of your child or your nieces or your nephews or whomever you are responsible for taking care of? So families as partners, these are some essential questions. So if you brought pen and paper, if you have your cell phone and you're able to take notes, these are some ways that we want to go over how you can advocate for literacy and strong literacy skills in your students. How do you partner with your child's teacher? Think about that if you're a parent. If you're a teacher and you're a parent, because I'm that person. I'm an educator and I am a parent. So how do you partner with your child's teacher? What help or resources do you need to strengthen that relationship? What do you need to be able to partner with them? What do you need to better understand? What help or resources do you need to support your child in reading at home? Think about those things. All right, so checking for potholes. Again, we are working to ensure parents and family members are advocates for their students. So it's important that you check for potholes in the curriculum or what's being taught to your child. So a way you can do that is remember what I said earlier. Reading instruction should be taught, or reading should be taught. And instruction in reading should include these 3 things. It should be explicit, very explicit. It should be systematic. That means it goes in a planned sequence. This has to happen before this has to happen, and it goes into this planned sequence from simple to difficult task. And then it must be evidence-based. You want to make sure that the instruction that your child is receiving is evidence-based. And these are some guiding questions you can ask to ensure that. And these are some things as a parent. When my son was in kindergarten, while I'm working to do other things, that I should have asked because I assumed because he was doing well. He was making the S's on his report card, but he had taught himself even that early to compensate. So I should have asked, what's phonemic awareness or phonological awareness being taught explicitly? Is phonics and spelling being taught explicitly and systematic? Does phonics instruction work on blending and segmenting sounds to read and spell words? Are they doing what Chelsea mentioned, breaking those words apart, putting them back together? And are they able to identify the different parts of words? So these are some guiding questions that you can take and ask your child's teacher or administrator. All right. And becoming an advocate requires the 4 R's. I call these 4 R's. Review. Learn about the school system of support for literacy. Ask the questions. Know what's happening in the classroom. Record. Keep notes. If you're meeting with your child's teacher, keep notes and that 2-way communication about what's going on with your child in reading and writing. Request. Talk to other parents and family members who have similar experience. Find out your district's literacy initiatives and support. There are some great things happening in Columbus. One of your schools in this district was recognized by the state as our first science of reading school. So there's some great things going on. And if you don't know what's going on, find out. You have to know. We have to be knowledgeable about things that are going on in our districts. Refer. Ask the school about opportunities to provide input on literacy approaches and practices and help make decisions. All right, communicate regularly with your child's teacher to know your child's reading level. I told you earlier that the beginning of the year screener window ends tomorrow statewide. So all K-3 students should have received a beginning or been administered a beginning of the year screener. So in the weeks to come, if your child has been identified as struggling in reading, you should be notified. So there has to be that communication so you'll know how you can help at home. And then at-home reading strategies, we'll get to that website, and address any concerns early. I cannot preach or say enough about prevention. The earlier we recognize that our students have learning difficulties or they may be struggling, the better. All right, social and emotional support. I'm not going to get into this a whole lot. However, this support gives your child skills on how to handle emotions during stress and traumatic experiences. And we all have dealt, or we're still dealing with, the impact of the pandemic. So there are some additional activities on our website that deals with social emotional support. There's also a video there that you can watch as a parent to help you better understand how you can help in this manner at home and provide those things for your children to support their emotional and social well-being at home. All right, and that's a few of the activities. All right, so our literacy partners, we have tons of resources for families and parents, and we want to go over those really quick. All right, so our Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading, we have 8 communities. This past summer, they did high dosage tutoring in several communities, and students saw great results. The Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading focuses on readiness, school attendance, and summer learning. Our Mississippi Public Broadcasting Channel. How many of you get the public broadcasting channel at home? You can access it. I don't have cable, and I can get it. We can get it. All right. So let me tell you, parents, this is a resource that I feel like is golden. Because what we did during the pandemic was we partnered with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, which reaches 2.2 million families and households across our state. Now, we had them, or they helped us, create what's called Mississippi Classroom TV. And if you go to Mississippi Public Broadcasting Station and you go to Mississippi Classroom TV, you can access over 260 lessons for your children to watch at home. These lessons are taught by these lovely ladies and all of the rest of our coaches. There's some early childhood lessons. But when we talk about phonemic awareness and phonics, there are lessons that your children can watch to help strengthen those skills. You can also print the materials to follow along. So there's like passages after each lesson, and you can take those passages and read it. So we don't advocate for students being on devices or in front of TVs or let the TV teach your child. However, this was a way for us during the pandemic to reach students that may have been at home and learning from home. So we still have these resources here. Take advantage of them, access them. If you don't feel comfortable doing the activities on our site, then you can access these and allow these ladies, turn them on, to teach some of the lessons to your children. We have Epic Mississippi. How many of us have cell phones? Yes, we do. All right, so what you can do, Epic Mississippi is a text messaging service. We've tried to think of everything. Text messaging service where you can receive text messages in one of these categories: early literacy, elementary, third grade, read alouds, vocabulary, social emotional tips. Those text messages go out at 4 p.m. and they're weekly. They sit out 2 to 5 days a week. And these tips can come to your phone. So if you text 33222 to subscribe, you will get these weekly text messages with activities and things that you can do driving in the car to strengthen your child's reading and literacy skills. All right, so some key takeaways. As parents, you will always be your child's first teachers. Always. Always maintain that open communication with your child's teacher. Try the activities and suggestions on our Strong Readers website. So all of these activities and hundreds more are on this website. You can access it by going to www.strongreadersms.com. You can access it. We have the website built where you can pull all of the activities up from your phone. And then ask questions, become involved, and attend school functions when possible. And if there's anything that we can do, please feel free to reach out to our office. We will point you in the direction of any resources or questions that you may have. We'll be glad to answer those. Here are some other additional resources, some additional websites, our parent guides and our family guides for student success. You can also access those as well on our website. And now we're down to questions and answers. Are there any questions or lingering questions or things that you'd like us to answer or try to answer? All right.
Activity. The comprehension that we talked about, there's a bookmark here that has the comprehension questions on it in a book. So I have 2 of these up here with bookmarks on them with the comprehension questions in them. We have the hot potato game with some of the starter words in there. And then by grade level, I have a couple of packs of sight word cards. So if you're here and your child is in any of these grade levels and would like to take these activities with you, please come up and enjoy them and work on them at home.
So please, we do not want to take any of this back. The chart papers and the charts with the activities, we don't want to take any of that back. So if you would like to get some of these activities to take with you, please feel free, as well as the anchor charts, you can take those. Our contact information is here. Feel free to take a picture of it. Email us if you have any questions. We get questions all day, every day, and we answer every single one of them. And so we are delighted to be here again with you to talk to you about some resources and some important things that you need to know as families and community members in regard to literacy. And we thank you for your time.
And thank you. Let's give our partners at the Mississippi Department of Education a round of applause. I just wanted to brag on the whole department for reaching out to us and partnering with us on several initiatives as we work diligently to improve literacy. One important aspect of this meeting today is the plethora of resources. We will try to get those in one location, but they're also on the MCD website. I also want to commend the department for our literacy coaches who are in our buildings. We have one with us today who's at Franklin Academy, so the resources are there. But as parents and the community members, I ask for you to continue to be advocates for your children and community, demand excellence from us, demand leadership, demand instruction, demand these resources being used, ask the tough questions, ensure that your child is getting the very best education. And that's the reason why we will continue to have these parent advocacy meetings, because we feel that your child's education is important. And the more the information you have about the expectations and the things we should do, the better community and school district will become. Again, thank you to the Columbus community. Thank you to the Mississippi Department of Education, Ms. Wynn, and